This is Cast of Wonders, the fiction podcast for young adults featuring stories of the fantastic. Welcome. Episode 145 for November 9th, 2014. Our story this week is Tell Them of the Sky by A.T. Greenblatt. A.T. Greenblatt is a mechanical engineer by day and a writer by night. Fueled by a sheer love of books and a tyrannical imagination, she writes the stories that appear over her morning coffee and won't leave her alone until they're put down on paper. She's a graduate of Viable Paradise 16, and her work has appeared in Daily Science Fiction, Buzzy Mag, and other online journals. You can find her online at atgreenblatt, that's with 2 T's.com, and on Twitter as @atgreenblatt, and you can find the links for those in the show notes as well. The story is narrated for you by the lovely Peter Newman. Peter Newman co-writes the Hugo-nominated Tea and Jeopardy podcast released through the Geek Planet online network, where he's the voice of the world's most patient butler, Latimer. His debut fantasy novel, The Vagrant, is being published by Harper Voyager next year in 2015. You can find him on Twitter and online with the phrase, "Run Pete Right," or follow our handy links in the show notes. And now, we've a tale to tell.
Tell Them of the Sky by A.T. Greenblatt. She is too small, Kitkin thinks, the first time she enters his tiny workshop tucked between the market stalls. Too young to have left the nest alone. Yet, despite the years of waiting, he still feels a prick of hope as she steps out of the city's unrelenting smog and over the threshold, thinking, perhaps she will be the one. Perhaps she will ask. "Are you lost, child?" says Kitkin, setting down his tools. She is dressed in cream-coloured silk, a foolish colour to wear in this city, but her shoes are covered in grime. She nods. "I thought I saw a raven," she says. "And did you?" Her face crumples with disappointment. Nanny couldn't keep up. She doesn't believe birds exist. Kitkin smiles. Customers do not randomly wander into his shop. "Well, I do," he says, pointing at the display next to her. "See?" The tiny table is filled with a flock of toys, and from it she picks up a sparrow made of wood and cloth. In her hands, the bird lifts its head, chirping happily, stretching its neck up towards the canopy ceiling in anticipation. But instead of releasing it, the girl frowns at the bird for a moment and places it back on its perch. Kitkin raises his eyebrows. The sparrow's little tricks often delight customers. But then again, most of his customers do not wear the finest silk. No, she will not ask, he thinks. Kitkin ignores the ache of disappointment as he returns to the eagle he is crafting, watching her as he carves. One by one, she examines each toy and kite in his shop, picking them up, bringing them to life, setting them down again moments later. She lingers only at the doll which she has studied with fascination. At her touch, it smiles, stretching out its lacy wings, turning its tiny face upwards, and with a few strong beats, it lifts itself out of the girl's hands into the air above her head. Only then does her frown disappear. "Can you make other things fly?" she asks, balancing on her toes like a dancer, catching the doll in her outstretched arms. "Yes," replies Kitkin. She nods, setting the doll down tenderly, and then, with the swift impulsiveness of a child, she steps out of his narrow shop into the bustling market. Kitkin rushes after her, afraid she'll be knocked over or lost again, but he finds her standing fearlessly among the broken cobblestones and crowded stalls, looking past the coloured canopies, up into the thick, oily clouds of smog, the smog that, despite the city's filters and barriers, is turning her cream robes grey. Kitkin stops beside her, following her gaze. In all the years he has been in this city, no one has ever bothered to look at the sticky black sky without his toys or kites in their hands. The girl longs for what she cannot reach, he thinks. A longing Kitkin himself knows well. "What is your name, child?" he asks. "Aya," she replies, and Kitkin smiles. That evening, long after her nurse has found her and whisked her away, Kitkin begins a new project. The second time Aya visits his shop, she is almost grown. Kitkin knew that she would one day return, and yet he is surprised to see her standing in the doorway, brushing the soot off her clothes. She is early. "It's been a while," he says, tilting his head respectfully. Despite the ration restrictions of the new war, she still wears silk, but it is a darker colour, a wiser one. The market, too, has lost some of its vibrancy. Fruit sellers now barter uniforms and weapons, and many citizens have left to defend their kingdom in foreign lands. But not Kitkin. Not Aya. "Nanny didn't like this place," she says. "She thinks birds and kites should stay in stories. But Papa says I'm too old for Nanny now." Aya reaches out, but doesn't quite brush a kite with her fingertips. "Why do you make these toys, craftsman?" "Even a simple toy maker must eat, child." "I am no longer a child, craftsman. Why hawks and gliders?" Kitkin smiles. She has grown tall in her absence. "To remember," he says, "and to share the memory." She frowns in confusion, but turns and picks up the kite. It flutters in her hands, as if in a spring breeze. "Why are they all that colour?" "I call it sky blue." "Why?" Kitkin sighs. How does he explain what lies beyond the smog and the ash? The question has tormented him for years, haunting his waking hours and his dreams. And though he tries, the sky remains too vast to be captured with his unskilled words and his simple toys, and yet too beautiful to keep to himself. He sees from her expression that his own face has betrayed him. "You've seen it?" she asks, her eyes bright. "They say it's just a story, that nothing exists beyond the smog. People must think you're mad." "I do not often speak of it." "Yes, you do." She gestures to his birds and star lamps. Now there is desire in her eyes. "I want to see the sky too, craftsman." Kitkin studies her. She is tall, but she still must grow. She should be out in the city, he thinks, enjoying her new freedom. There will be time enough for the sky later. "Once you've seen it, you can never come home," he says, nodding at her rich clothes and real leather shoes. "You have a good life here. I'm sorry, child, I cannot give you what you want." She bites her lips as if biting back the words, and strides out into the market, fists clenched at her side. This time, he does not follow her out. Instead, Kitkin pulls out the empty frame of her wings. It is the only lie she hadn't seen through, but she had come too soon. Too soon. He knows it's the longing for the sky that brings her back. Aya visits often as the years slip by, despite the war that rages on. The cleaning boys and the girls with brooms have all been sent away to fight, so the smog claims the market, soiling its bright colours and masking the scents of fresh bread. The customers are fewer now, so Kitkin turns his efforts to the wings, making needles and paintbrushes dance, weaving endless webs of cloth, smiling as the empty frame slowly begins to fill. Eventually, he can no longer hide them from her. She studies the wings, saying nothing as usual, but Kitkin sees the relief on her face. "Why?" she asks. "Because you asked," he replies, though it's not quite the reason. The truth is, he was given too large of a gift to keep to himself. She often watches him work, and then, gradually, with his encouragement and guidance, she picks up the tools. She is hopeless with wood and cloth, but her paper lanterns and gliders grow from crude to exquisite. While he paints, Aya uses ink and nib to adorn her creations, and though Kitkin can read only a little of the language, the words are beautiful. She works fiercely, her desire for the sky burning strong, but he catches her, sometimes, regarding the wings with hesitation, or staring out of the shop at her sickening city with longing. She is not ready yet, he thinks, with a tinge of disappointment. Yet still, he sews on. It's only when the city's filters fail completely and the rain comes down in black, oil-tainted drops that she gives her doubts voice. "You waste your time, craftsman," she says, standing up from the workbench and stepping away from the tools. "You should be making weapons, not toys." "It wouldn't change anything," he says. "How do you know?" Kitkin sets down his tools. True, his creations do not stop wars, but they bring glimmers of hope to the drifting souls who wander into his shop. "Because people are lost, and will always be lost without the sky," he says. They stare at each other for a long moment before she removes her apron and heads towards the door. "I'm not ready to abandon my country yet, craftsman." Kitkin hastily follows. "Where are you going?" "To fight." Kitkin's heart drops, but he does not stop her. Her choices should be hers alone. The sky has called her. She'll come back. She must come back, he tells himself as he stands in the threshold, watching as she disappears into the polluted rain. Months pass, but she does not return. It is a long time before Kitkin can touch his nearly finished creation without a heavy heart. On the night the wings are finished, she enters his shop for the last time. Her shoes are worn, and her eyes are sadder now, but wiser. Kitkin sees she has grown strong in her absence. "I am ready now," she says, and Kitkin fetches his masterpiece. The wings are painted with the colours of the sunrise, the blue of a clear day, the hues of rain clouds, and the brightness of stars. They appear delicate, like lace, but they are made for her, and she for them, and they will carry her. "Remove your shirt," he says, and she obeys. His skilled fingers work quickly, fastening the wings to her shoulders and her wrists with a needle and thread. She winces, but says nothing, because they both know that every farewell comes with a bit of pain. As he sews, he tells her of the wind and of the sun, of the stars and moon. He tells her that the wings will most likely break when she lands, and she will be stranded in a faraway place. "But what will I do there?" she asks. "Tell them of the sky," he replies. By the time he is finished, it's nearly dawn. There's only a little blood, but he knows that when the wings are gone, the scars will remain. Yet, for the first time since they've met, Aya smiles. Together, they walk through the abandoned market, leaving footprints on the sooty cobblestones. They stop in a small square with a clear view. "How can I repay you?" she asks. "Once you've seen it, you will know how." She nods and tilts her head upward. Her wings beat once, lifting her feet from the ground. She laughs, the joy of flight radiating from her. "I will never forget you," says Aya, and she rises. Long after she's gone, Kitkin stands alone in the square, staring at the barest glimmer of blue shining through the hole in the smog. He smiles and touches the scars on his wrists, where years ago, in a distant place, a craftswoman had shared a gift. "Thank you," he whispers.
Did you notice the return of the non-genre episode art this week? This beautiful story simply defies categorization, though I suppose if I had to give it any one genre descriptor, I'd personally choose steampunk. The combination of fine craftsmanship, a world blighted by pollution and war, winged flight, and Aya's willingness to leave her home in search of a better future reminds me of the expansionist sentiments that were popular during the mid-19th century. Good stories, and there's not a doubt in my mind that this is a good story, aren't concerned with the convenience of labeled genre boxes. Join us next week for the return of Cy DeGurch with Rick Kennett's 30 Minutes for New Hell. Please lend a hand in supporting podcast fiction by writing a review of this episode on iTunes or on our Facebook page, or by sharing the episode with others. You can find us on Twitter as well. We're at Cast of Wonders. And please consider making a donation to the show via the PayPal links you can find on our website. Our donations help cover the costs of stories and hosting, and every little bit helps. You have our heartfelt thanks for helping us to keep bringing you the best in young adult audio fiction week after week. Cast of Wonders is a production of Wolfsbane Publishing and is brought to you by the creative team of Barry J. Northern, our artist and publisher, Alan Sale, our audio producer, and I remain, as always, your humble editor and host, Marguerite Kenner. Our episodes are released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license. Share all you like, but no changes. Our theme, Appeal to Heavens, is by Alexi Nov from musicalley.com. Thanks for listening. Please lend a hand in supporting Fogcast. Ooh, that sounds like an interesting little thing. Fogcast coming from you live from London. I'll have to do that. This is the Fogcast. Can I see if I can get a BBC sound effect going? I'm sorry. Hopefully this is entertaining for you, Ellen. Let's try the boilerplate again, shall we?